Hey guys, it's Nerdwino. I got to sit down with Finite Singularity this morning. He was an awesome streamer on Twitch. He streams software development and OBS plugin development right now, but he has a background in civil engineering. He used to work on simulations of earthquakes on large buildings. We had a super interesting chat. I know you're going to love it. Check out the video and leave a comment below. Let me know if you want to see more of this kind of content. How about that?
Check. Testing 1, 2. Isn't that what we're supposed to say?
I think that's right. I don't know. I'm not. I'm many things. That pro streamer is not one of them. You know. It is good to see you, though. Good morning. I think we're good.
Yes. So Stony, apparently, because I went live with Nerdowino's got some amazing science stuff going on where he's hacked into Twitch or something, and now they announce that I'm streaming when I go live with Nerdowino. That was all you, right?
Yeah, of course. I can do that stuff. So actually, yes, I think now it used to be that with the guest star thing, they would just pull in your face camera, but I think you can actually be streaming at the same time as the other person.
Oh, okay.
So that's probably why they send that announcement, but they don't check to see whether you're actually live or not.
Got it.
Because Twitch.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm looking a little pale this morning. This is not my usual. So my face cam wasn't working this morning when I got up. I spent 20 minutes trying to fix that, and now I just have.
Oh, fun.
It's always good, right? When nothing's working, especially when it's like 4:30. Chat's focused. Thanks for the follow. All right. Well, so Finite, welcome. Thank you for coming on. I know that you've been doing a bunch of these recently, and you've been kind of blowing up a little bit. It's good to see.
It's been fun.
It's good to see.
It's been a lot of fun. Streaming has always been an adventure, and it's sort of the latest chapter in what I never thought would happen. Right? You know, that's the thing about Twitch is it seems like, you know, you can't expect anything, and it's always fun and amazing, and you're a lot of times just along for the ride.
Exactly. And I think that's when it's the most fun. When you're just along for the ride, you know, you're like, oh my gosh,
exactly.
How did this happen? We will get into that a little bit later, of course, because streaming is going to be a big part of this conversation.
Okay.
But so at the beginning of these, if you saw, I don't know if you caught the one we did with Irish John, but I always do this like quick fire question round at the beginning.
Yep.
And so I've changed them a little bit.
So wait, I'll stop you here real quick. I was going to prepare for this.
No, there's no preparing. I changed the questions.
Oh, okay. Well, then it wouldn't have mattered. But, you know, with my appendix eating itself, I kind of got distracted a little bit and
apparently
didn't do my homework.
Apparently, your appendix was like, yeah, I don't want to be on Nerdwino stream. Thanks very much. I'm out.
Something like that.
But no, I'm sorry. I was sorry to hear about that, and I'm glad you're feeling, if not completely better, then a bit better at least.
Oh yeah, I'm feeling a lot every day. It's one of those things that, like, at first I was like, man, this is gonna take forever, but it's really the last like 3-4 days. It's like accelerated. I'm almost back to feeling normal again.
Yeah.
So
perfect. Okay, let's jump into the quick fire questions, and then we'll get into some other stuff. So some of the questions are the same as our jump. We'll see. So the first question: cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Sure, I'm not surprised. Are you a morning person or an evening person?
I've always been an evening person, but since we had kids, my morningness has had to persevere. So I'm more of a morning person these days, but reluctantly.
Fair enough. What's your favorite city?
Favorite city? I would say either. I'm going to cheat and do two. Obviously, I love the Minneapolis-St. Paul area because I live here and we chose to live here, and it's a wonderful, wonderful place, and I've got a lot of family here. But if I'm traveling, the city I love to go more than anywhere else in the world is Bergen, Norway.
Oh, there you go.
So I got to spend a lot of time in Bergen about a decade ago doing, business stuff, and absolutely fell in love with the city with the time that I spent there. It's a beautiful, beautiful place with just amazing people. So
very nice. When you're coding or trying to concentrate, do you like music in the background or silence?
I don't have much of a preference. I can do either, and I would say probably half the time I have music playing and half the time I forget to turn it on. So You know, obviously neither really sticks for me because I don't have a deep
Okay.
preference
All
on
right.
it.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'm a silence person when I'm trying to concentrate. But so Elon Musk calls you up and tells you you're going to Mars because who doesn't want to go to Mars? But you can only take one book. Which book are you going to take?
Which book am I gonna take? Probably. The name of the book just went totally blank in my mind. The one that was made into a movie where the guy's stuck on Mars and he has to grow potatoes. What was that? It was a fantastic movie with Matt Damon.
Right. What was it called? Chat, help us out. I've got like The Martian. There you go. The Martian.
Yes. So I think that would probably be the most practical one to bring with me. But in terms of enjoyment, I did enjoy that book a lot. It would probably be something like Return of the King, which is my favorite of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So
very nice. Tea or coffee?
Coffee. Though I do like tea.
I can see how this is gonna go.
But I do. My
No,
sister actually has a whole company that she sells premium tea. So we get wonderful tea that arrives at our house on a regular basis, and I like it. But I definitely prefer coffee.
Yeah.
So
fair enough. What's your favorite programming language?
Favorite programming language. I've always, this is going to sound a lot like Irish John's response. I've always viewed programming languages as a tool. So it really depends on what's up for the best thing for what I'm currently doing. But I would say if I had to pick one, it would probably be C++ of all things, only because some of the most enjoyable and interesting programming I've ever done was a big project in C++. And so it brings back good memories. So if you gotta pick one, you might as well pick the one that has some good memories attached to it.
Absolutely. Yeah, why not? All right, so C++. What is the best movie ever made? In your opinion.
Best movie ever made. That one's hard. Man, I'd have to think about that. I can tell you like our go-to movie in the household, because we just love to unplug our superhero Marvel movies. I wouldn't exactly call them the best movies ever made, but they're a lot of fun. I don't know if I can name a best movie ever made.
All right, fair enough.
Maybe I'll go back and do one of the classics, because I've watched it a lot. I really enjoy it, and I quote it all the time, which is Casablanca.
Oh my goodness, that is a classic.
We'll go way back to the classic.
So the next question is kind of similar, actually. Star Trek or Star Wars?
Star Wars. I'm definitely a Star Wars. As science-based as I am, and I know most people who are really into, the hard sciences really like Star Trek more, because it's a bit more sci on the sci-fi scale. I've always just enjoyed the Star Wars movies a lot more. So
fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. We have a question from chat. So I'll summarize it as beer, wine, or spirits.
Wine, definitely wine. I'm a big wine drinker.
Nice.
I mean, I don't over drink. I shouldn't.
Oh, I think we know what you meant. We'll edit that out. Don't worry. I actually have a friend that owns a winery up on the Central Coast, so maybe we'll see if he'll just sponsor that segment, and you can.
Oh, very cool. Very cool.
Let me see. Where did we get to? Paper books or ebooks?
Paper books. Definitely paper books.
Agreed. That's the correct answer. If you could only listen to one song for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Only one song. Probably. Gosh, these are hard. These are hard questions. I'll narrow it down to an artist. Probably a Queen song. Probably Bohemian Rhapsody. That's probably my favorite Queen song, and I absolutely love Queen. So we'll go with Bohemian Rhapsody.
That's a good song, sure. All right,
And it's long, and it's very diverse. So if you could only listen to one over and over again,
it does have
it's kind of like 3 songs in one, right?
Yeah, it does have a little bit of everything, that's for sure. A bit of an echo. Does anyone else hearing a bit of an echo for finite? I think it sounds good.
Oh.
Last question. What if you could visit anywhere in the universe? Where would you go?
Anywhere in the universe. This is going to be closer to home than I think a lot of people would pick for anywhere in the universe, but I would love to be in some sort of a space capsule next to Saturn. I just think it would be, the photos that you see that came from the various missions to Saturn are just so stunningly gorgeous that to experience that view like through my own eyeballs would I think just be absolutely incredible.
Yeah. Agree. That's actually so when I was thinking about these questions, that was actually my answer as well. That or the Big Bang would be the other place I would be interested to go and see.
Oh, I didn't know we were talking all space-time.
Well, hey man, I mean, as you travel and let's not get too deep here, but let's just we're not even going to go there because
we're just going to leave that there.
All right, well that concludes our quickfire question round. As somebody in chat said, what was the comment? It was like the meaning of finite singularity is that every question has all the answers.
Very true, very true. I tell Mrs. Singularity this. It means I'm always right. And she said, but it also means you're always wrong. And I said, touche.
It's good that they always keep you grounded,
It's true, very true, very true.
All right, so the way I did this before with Irish John was we kind of just went from the beginning, really, and we talked a bit about like school and your childhood.
Yeah.
So what were you like at school? Were you a nerdy kid? Were you more of a?
I was a very nerdy kid.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was a total dyed-in-the-wool nerd. And back then in the 80s, the nerds weren't cool yet, right? I mean, I'm kind of jealous of my kids these days because the nerdy kids are almost considered to be cool these days, and not so much back then. But I had some great friends growing up, and had very similar interests to my own. The one thing I was very athletic with was downhill skiing, and so I was a very competitive downhill skier growing up. Actually skied on the same ski team as Lindsay Kildow, who became Lindsey Vonn. So got to know her a bit as we were kids, and did a lot of downhill skiing. And to this day, the only thing I like more than coding is downhill skiing. It's my like deep true passion. So
yeah, I know we've talked about that before. Where there is talk of a Twitch ski trip somewhere sometime.
Yes, yes, I would love to do a Twitch ski trip. I do some live streaming from the local hills here because we've actually got pretty good cell coverage. So watch out this winter. You're probably going to see a few live streams from the hill, which are a lot of fun. We built up all the hardware and software to get telemetry data of speed and altitude and everything, and
nice.
Overlay it on the screen and stuff. So it's a fun thing that we do on my stream in the winter.
Why am I not? I'm not surprised that we have the stream is all set up with the telemetry. That's actually cool. Hogan698 says downhill skiing is wimps, real men do uphill skiing.
Yeah, real men do cross country skiing, and I definitely can't keep up with that one. So.
So did you? You're obviously you have a PhD. You're very highly educated.
Yep.
Did you come from a very highly educated family, or what was?
Both. So my dad had a bachelor's degree, but was incredibly intelligent. He was an engineer who did packaging machinery. So he would take like old packaging machinery and repurpose it for and it was all food packaging. So he was an engineer that was constantly working like in our garage. So I got a lot of my like engineering my love for engineering through him in the garage. My mom had done a couple years in college, but then went on and started working for an airline. And, that said, she's also very, very intelligent and absolutely could have been a PhD if that is what she had wanted to do. So I did come from a very, I wouldn't say like formally highly educated family, but a family that education was on sort of the forefront of everyone's minds. So.
Did we just lose audio?
What's that?
No,
I can hear you.
Sorry, you cut out at the end there, I think. Or maybe it's just me. It might be okay. It seems like we might have a lip sync, like a sync issue, but
got it.
Chat
okay.
I'm sure chat will let us know. So as you said, you were a nerdy kid, and then it's time to apply to college. Were you?
Yep.
So how did that go? What were you interested in, and did you know, or did you just go like?
Yeah. So my college application process was kind of interesting. Like I mentioned, I was big into downhill skiing, so I had a few schools that were saying you should come here and ski, NCAA skiing, that kind of stuff. And my parents had taken me to all these different colleges and everything. And my dad loved it, but it was also like, ouch for the price tag. I fell in love with Duke University when we visited, and they had a great biomedical engineering program, which is originally what I wanted to go into. I was really interested in things like joints and structures. And so I was like, well, I'll go into biomedical engineering and develop like prosthetic limbs and artificial hips and all of this sort of stuff. And applied early admission there and got in, so I didn't have to worry about it my senior year of high school, which was real nice. And then I got to Duke, and in like the first 2 weeks started talking to some upperclassmen who were in engineering, and I was like, do you know any biomedical engineers? And they were all like, oh yeah, we knew some of them back like the first year, but we haven't seen or heard from them since. And I started looking into what Duke did with biomedical engineering. Something I should have probably done before I applied. But it turns out that all they do at Duke, at the time at least, was sort of electrical, like pacemakers and stuff like that, and then like ultrasound stuff. And so it was nothing I was interested in. And I was like, oh. So I figured if instead of doing really little structures, maybe I'll do big structures. And so I switched over to structural engineering in the civil engineering department, and that's what I went through my whole schooling was in structural engineering.
And then did you stay? I can't remember. I looked this up because I was stalking you a little bit through your LinkedIn. Yeah. Did you stay at Duke for your PhD, or did you go somewhere else?
I did not. No, I ended up going to Princeton for my PhD.
That's right. And was that something? Why did you decide to do a PhD? Did you go straight from undergrad into the?
I did go straight from undergrad. I graduated from undergrad in 2001, and you may remember there was a little bit of a, shall we say, economic hiccup that occurred, the whole .com bubble bursting, approximately 4 or 5 months before I graduated. And one of the things about structural engineering and building and construction in general is when the economy goes, it goes even more.
Sure.
And so I started applying to jobs, engineering jobs with, what frankly was a very expensive education. And I also applied to some graduate schools because I did undergrad research when I was an undergrad and absolutely loved it. The stipends I was being offered for graduate school were not big, but they were bigger than an engineering position at an engineering firm at the time. That's how bad it was.
Wow.
And so I figured I'll go for the next 4 years and get another degree and get paid more than I would as an engineer starting out. And then we'll see what happens next.
Holy cow. Yeah, that's pretty bad. Because it was a bit dire, but it was very nice to have that option to go do something else I love doing. Yeah. I don't know what the situation is now, but I know when I went through grad school, um, the stipend was enough to live off, at least in the Midwest. Like I could
Yep.
survive. I wasn't, I wasn't eating too much caviar, which I don't like caviar anyway.
No, no, definitely
But it was
not. Definitely
survivable. It was
not. So,
survivable. I'm not sure that that's the case anymore.
yeah, there's from hearing from other people I know that have recently gone through grad school, like everything else, it seems it's getting tighter and tighter and tighter. So it's in some places getting very hard. I mean, New Jersey is a very high cost of living area, and so the stipend was a little bit better than other schools, but it didn't cover the gap. And so I was very, very fortunate that my girlfriend at the time, who then became my fiance and then became Mrs. Singularity, decided to move out to New Jersey, and she was working full time in a decent job, and so she was kind of we lived together, and it worked great. So
That's awesome. Yeah, that helps. I
yeah.
think, and I think it also depends on the subject, right? I think like astronomy, because astronomy is such a popular, gen ed you got these science gen ed
Yep.
requirements, and everyone wants to take astronomy. They crank out the astronomy 101 classes, and they can afford to pay a few grad students a few bucks to
Yep.
TA.
Yep.
So so you do your PhD. Talk a little bit about what you were working on, because I know that our backgrounds, although the areas that we like, the subject areas are quite different, but the
Yep.
work that we did is actually pretty similar. I think in supercomputing and simulations.
Yep. So the explain it like I'm not a civil engineer version of it, because obviously PhD work tends to be very, very narrow and very, very technical, and so I won't bore you with all the details. But the idea is in high seismicity zones where you have a lot of earthquakes. One of the things you don't want to have happen is large buildings falling down on people, obviously.
Sure.
And so we worked. So the field of civil engineering moves very, very slowly, because changes in technology can mean long-lasting effects where you have issues. I mean, even look what happened down in Miami a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
They were to code, but cutting a bunch of corners, and a lot of people suffered and unfortunately died because of it. And Bit gave me, no, it's not, but small buildings are easier to make, in some ways, make stand up in large earthquakes. So the idea was there's what's called a steel frame, a steel moment resisting frame, where everything's welded together. And so everything kind of has to bend together, and it acts kind of like a big spring that would go back and forth in an earthquake. Which might sound good, except if you go too far, that spring's gonna fail and things are gonna fall over. So what we worked on was what was called a self-centering moment resisting frame, where instead of fixing the column to the beam, it was just a free sort of butt joint. I mean, there was some connection so it wouldn't just fall out, but then across the building, you stretched these steel cables that you then post-tensioned, which pulled the whole thing together.
Uh-huh.
So now what happens when it shakes, you open a gap with that beam, and that stretches the cable, which acts like a spring that tries to pull the building back together, which self-centers it. So even in an extremely severe earthquake where you'd maybe even have to tear the whole building down, rather than going off to the side, it's going to self-center and allow people to egress and be not dead. So I worked on how do we design these structures from a risk assessment point of view, and made some pretty big inroads. Supercomputing was just starting to be a big thing in structural engineering, and so I was the first person to say, okay, let's generate 10 or 50,000 synthetic earthquakes and subject this computer model of this structure to all of them. And we'll generate those earthquakes in various distributions of risk. And so then we can determine the risk of failure of the structure at a much higher level, which had never really been done before. And so I got to work on big, giant supercomputing clusters and do a lot of really neat coding and a lot of neat sort of statistical and probabilistic analysis on the structures.
Very
So
nice.
I hope that was high level enough.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think we have a pretty a pretty tech savvy pretty tech savvy audience in here. So, and so then once the earthquake is finished, is the building done? You have to rebuild the building, or
Well, it depends. It depends on the severity of the earthquake and how much it was displaced and how much it moved. Overall, if you reduce the risk of failure, you're also in general reducing the risk of having to tear the building down. So it would typically make the building longer lasting as well.
yeah.
There were actually components in the structures that were designed to fail to dissipate energy, and they could easily be replaced.
Right.
So some pretty neat technology that went into the design of these things.
And so what programming languages were you using for this at the time?
That was the actual modeling software that I wrote was all C++. The front end for it to sort of set up the earthquake and the structure, on the node of the cluster or whatever, that was all Python. So it was sort of Python, or very early, like Python 1 point whatever. This was like 2003, 2004. So yeah, very early Python that we were doing there.
Yeah,
so.
I'm trying to think. I would have been around. It was probably like 2000, 2000 when I started doing the cosmology simulations on the supercomputers, and that was all in Fortran 90.
Yes, I did have to convert. So my advisor was sort of one of the first people to actually figure out how to generate synthetic earthquakes, and he did this back in like the 70s.
Oh my goodness.
And so he gave me a bunch of code for his earthquake simulation algorithms written in Fortran 66. And I had to convert all that to C++. So I don't think I could write any Fortran 66, but I can convert it to something else. I can read it. Although this was, 15 years ago, so I don't know if I could still read it. So.
It probably comes back pretty quick, I'm guessing. But yeah, I don't think. Yeah, I never did 66. We had some Fortran 77 code, but then Fortran 90.
Okay.
Fortran 90 had a few it wasn't object oriented, but it had a few features that pretended like it was. So, but yeah,
Yep.
And then it was all held together with org scripts, and I don't even remember.
Yep.
Like sitting in the queue for a week waiting for your code to run, and then finding out that whilst it ran fine on the test cluster, it did not scale to 1024 cores.
Oh, we've been there. I've been there quite a bit. I tell some stories on my stream about some of those experiences. Getting introduced to the Total View debugger was like one of the most mind-blowing experiences I've ever had in my life. So.
Yeah, I remember Total View. That was probably the first time I had worked with an actual debugger instead of just using breakpoints and printing stuff to the terminal and trying to figure out what the hell was going on.
Yeah, and Total View was like jumping into the deep end. I mean, that thing was a beast.
Yeah, and debugging like multiple cores at once.
Exactly.
I had forgotten about all that stuff. Chat? Let me just say welcome in to everybody. Sorry, I'm not ignoring you if you're coming in. We're just having a chat with Finite, and it's a little difficult to keep up with chat at the same time. But you're welcome in. Hope you're enjoying the chat. Let's see. So Proton Fig had a question. He says, "Have you ever been to Finland? If not, would you like to come?" He says, "There's awesome
I would love to go to
downhill skiing in Finland."
Absolutely, I would love to go to Finland. I've never been there, but I did get a chance to ski area named Geilo in Norway, which was a lot of fun. But I'd love to explore Scandinavia more, Scandinavia in general. A lot of my mom's whole side is all Scandinavian. So it's one of those places that I have some ancestry there and would love to explore more.
Oh, nice.
But I have not been to Finland yet. Yet being the keyword.
There we go. Well, seems like you have somewhere to stay now.
Yeah.
So I actually went to Norway. We had a Planck meeting in Norway when I was working on Planck. That was the only time. But it was beautiful. I really enjoyed it. I mean, it was a little... the one abiding memory I have is when I left, I had a beer at the airport, and I think it was close on $30 for the beer at the airport.
Yep.
But it was a beautiful country, and we had a really good time. It was a really good meeting. Some collaborators on the Planck mission were from Norway, so that was why that particular meeting was there.
Very cool. Very cool.
But I haven't been
Well,
to.
Finland is not Scandinavia, but Fennoscandia it is. Okay. Today I learned. Today I learned.
Yeah. Okay. And so you get your PhD in in civil engineering, and you have all this experience, and you decided, I guess, that academia was not the place to be. What?
So there was another step in there. So
Okay.
right after I finished up my PhD work, I was offered a postdoc position with my same advisor, working on essentially it was a company that came in. This one's got a little bit of a story too. You know, when it's hurricane season and you turn on the Weather Channel and you see the cone of doom in the Gulf of Mexico, and it's like, where's the hurricane gonna hit? Where is it gonna strike? It turns out that insurance companies get a little bit nervous, right? Because depending on where all their homeowners policies and stuff are, they may get hit hard, they may not get hit so hard. And so a market opens up overnight for what can be kind of considered catastrophe bonds, which are ways that insurance companies, well, they have insurance companies, which is called reinsurance. It's that the reinsurance companies are just the other insurance companies. So it's this weird thing where they try to like spread their risk out to the other companies that are in their field. But they have to understand the risk of the policies that they're getting in order to assess whether, how to price that and everything if they're going to take on that risk. Well, at the time, in order to, they would bundle policies together in what they called bundles, and there were about 100,000 homeowners policies in each bundle. And to analyze one of these bundles, it would take about 9 hours. Well, the problem was that the forecasts are updated every 3 hours. And so by the time the forecast would come out and you would calculate your risk, you were 3 forecasts old. And so this company was trying to, fix this, and they came to the university and started this research project, and we had gotten the process down to like 15 minutes.
Wow.
And so any insurance company that had this technology would be at a huge advantage going into whatever it was. And then this company promptly fired the university and dropped us like a bad habit and went and started selling their wares. And so I was told then, yeah, you got about 2 weeks and then you got to be out of here. And I was like, I mean, you know this well. Finding a job in 2 weeks with a PhD is not practical.
Right.
We'll just put it that way. So at that point,
I mean, you're essentially unemployable with a PhD. That's
exactly. So at that point, the head of the department, who was on the environmental engineering side of things, came to me and said, well, we're not going to have you just kicked out on the street. I heard you're a good programmer. Our programmer for my research project is like not doing well at all. Can you come in for like 6 months and get all of our software in shape? And he was working on carbon capture and storage. So geological storage, you take the CO2, you'd compress it to a supercritical fluid, and you'd inject it into these like deep aquifers they were saltwater aquifers that were, 2-3 miles under the Earth's surface. They were very, very deep. And then the idea is the CO2 would sit down there. Because of geochemical processes, it would actually turn into various calcites and other minerals, and then it would just CO2 would get trapped down there. So it's a great idea. On the downside, you're pressurizing a deep saline aquifer. And so where's that salt water going to go? Typically, it's going to go up through the stack, and you might be invading fresh water sources or even leaking all the way to the surface and ruining, soils and stuff like that. So we had to model all of the various fluid flows and everything over these huge areas where you'd be injecting CO2. And so I went and started this project with them, and it was supposed to be a 6-month stint while I looked for a job. And my job ended up coming 2 years later when we spun it off into a company to advise the various companies that were starting in the carbon capture and storage industry at the time. This was like 2010, 2011 kind of time frame. And so moved to Minnesota at that point because we had just had our first child and wanted to be back near family. And yeah, it was a really, really neat experience to kind of get into what I ended up doing then for a few years until that industry completely imploded. I'm having mic issues here. Hold on.
I don't
here.
think so. It just sounds it just has a little bit of a, you know, when you use a chorus pedal on an electric guitar.
Got it. It might. Yeah, I think.
It sounds fine most of the time, and then occasionally it just goes a little weird. But I don't think it's.
Got it. Maybe it's an encoding issue on the way over or something, because all my levels here all look fine, and I spent about an hour yesterday tuning my mic levels, so I hope they're okay.
Can you guys hear Finite? Is that any better?
Am I okay now?
Yeah, let's see.
A robot since the surgery, something like that, or a clone maybe. I don't know. Do I have a robotic clone? Maybe they're actually androids.
Maybe you should. Maybe we could do that. It says you're 5x5. Okay, it sounds good now.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, you have a history of imploding industries, is what I'm taking away from this.
I do. If you ever want an industry to just vanish, bring me in. You can short the stocks of all the company. We imploded the carbon capture and storage industry. It wasn't actually Obama's fault. The fact that he didn't get his climate policy through, which is what would have kept that industry going. It was actually me. And then I went into the oil industry for a while. That's why I spent a lot of time in Bergen. And then the price of oil dropped to zero, and that industry kind of imploded, and I had no work there either. So.
That's funny.
It was. You can thank me for that one, imploding the oil industry for a few years back there. I think I did the world some good with it. No.
It's actually, so I haven't imploded any industries, but it's kind of uncanny how similar our experiences have been. Although I worked in risk management in between undergrad and grad, so I worked for an investment bank, who I won't name for fear of being abused, but one of the big investment banks. They're still around actually, and I did risk management for them, financial risk management, and actually they had their own supercomputers that were running, generating covariance matrices for all of the assets that the firm held.
Got it.
And generating a risk number. Actually, it was really cool. So it was the black Linneman risk model, and Linneman was my boss basically. So
very cool.
Yeah, so I
very
worked
cool.
for Bob Linneman for a while.
I spent about 5 years in fintech doing basically the same thing. We were developing these big giant risk models for very large complicated households, and we're able to quickly assess risk based on professions and holdings and all this other stuff, and then recommend changes to portfolios based on that. And the math behind it was fantastic. I loved the programming and math. The industry itself, I'll never touch again. I felt like I had to take a shower every night when I got home to wash off all the fintech.
Yeah, it's an interesting. That whole industry is pretty interesting.
It is interesting. Is a good political word for it. When I was working at the bank, we were basically dealing with the traders and their risk, and so I would have to go tell traders that they were taking too much risk. And you know how Wall Street traders love to be told that they're taking too much risk, especially when you're telling them what to do. That's where it really comes into play.
The only nice thing about it was that the firm was a partnership, and the partners were really invested in the risk management system, and so it was their money that was being, I don't want to use the word gambled, but it was their money that was on the table, and so they would back us up, and that we did get a little, but it was interesting. And then I couldn't stay away, so I was a financial advisor for a while after I left JPL, and I'm done. I'm out. I learned my lesson.
I'm out. Yep. Yeah. But at least you can do your own investments now, and you don't have to find a non.
So I have my CFP, my certified financial planner certification, and so we don't have to pay an advisor, but It's
Yeah, I was going through the whole CFA process when I pieced out, so
CFA
never
is
ended up
tough.
finishing that one up. It is. It's like 3 years of tests, and
Yeah, the CFP I think is a little easier. Although you do have to have three. I think you need 3 years of experience, but the testing is a little easier and probably more useful to you after you leave the CFP.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, CFA would have been great if I'd have stayed in.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I was doing, but not so much after leaving. So I'm glad I didn't push through, and it was expensive too. They don't like pay for you to get it either.
No. Yeah. So if you're in chat wondering what the hell we're talking about, so the CFP is basically is a financial planner for individuals, whereas a CFA is somebody that analyzes companies, big companies, and looks at their portfolios and their annual reports and digs in and tries to figure out if they're a good investment or not.
Yep.
Supernatural Writer, welcome in. Good to see you. And Science Streams, I see you in here. Okay, and then I know that you somewhere in here, and I'm not sure if it's at this point in your history, you started your own company doing like a software development or software consulting.
Yes. So it hold on. I'm setting a quick little alarm here because at 5 to 9 my time, I just have to tell my son that he needs to start getting ready and go out to the bus. I can stream for as long as we want to. I just have to let him know that it's time to go out to the bus. So, so back when I was in grad school, one of my sort of side gigs was building like simple web apps for people, and I got connected with a construction company, and we built a whole app for them to track time cards and a planning board where they could say where all their heavy equipment was and things like that. And so I developed this whole thing for them. It was terrible code, but it worked, and they used it for like 15 years, right? And then they came to me in 2017 and they said, do you want to build this, can you build this into like something modern for us, like a full mobile app so we can be doing stuff out in the field and everything? And they basically have funded me building this app for them for the last 6 years here. And it's been pretty amazing. So it's a full-on sort of field logistics app that lets them do everything from planning who goes to what jobs. They have like 100 pieces of heavy equipment and 3 truck drivers that drive the equipment all around. It tracks, where the equipment needs to go and tells the truck drivers directions and all that sort of stuff.
You developed. I've seen you developing this on stream, right?
Yeah. So I because I own all the rights to the software, so I can stream my work on it, and it's been a great opportunity to kind of build some software, and I'm getting to the point where I think I'm wanting to move on. After 6 years of the same project, I'm honestly a little bit burnt out on it, because it's a lot of the same thing, and I'll support it forever, right? I'll always be able to support it, but it's pretty much feature complete now, and it's working well, and so it's getting close to the point where I need to kind of take my exit. The idea originally was build this up to sell to other companies, and it's sort of a chicken egg problem where I underestimated how much it would take for me to support the software. And so I would need to hire 3 or 4 people in order to be able to support more clients. And I would need a bunch more clients to be able to hire 3 or 4 more people.
Sure.
And so then it's, do you go out and get funding? And right now the construction industry, like I said, when the economy is rocky, it's going to be a really hard sell convincing a construction company to switch up all their software and pay a bunch of money and whatnot. So it's kind of bad timing on it right now, but luckily I can kind of put it on the back burner and wait it out a bit and go do something else for a bit. And if the iron gets hot again, I can strike again. So
yeah, for sure. And I mean, you have the skill set, right? So you can always apply the skill set to anything, which is interesting.
Yeah.
With the software, so we'll get into streaming here in a second, but with the software development, when do you get the biggest kick out of software development?
My biggest thing for software development is finding is people using the software. It's amazing to me to be able to build something and then have people actually use that thing that I built. You know, when I was in graduate school, I was the only one running the software that I built. I mean, sure, they ran it a little, you know, a few people were running it here and there after I left, but it was like my own program, my own thing that I built and I ran, and I was the only user for. Doing this kind of software, it's just amazing to me that there's, you know, 50, 60 people whose day job now is completely integrated in this software that I built, and it's helping this small company do what it needs to do to be, you know, to be agile, to be competitive, and you know, it's helping a lot of people make a living, which is one of the reasons I think why I've gotten so hooked on building these plugins for OBS, which I'm sure we'll go into here.
We will.
It's just the sheer number of people using them at this point. It's like amazing and terrifying at the same time. You know, it was one of these like, well, I need this blur plugin for my stream, so why don't I just package it up? Maybe there's a few other people that could use it, and all of a sudden I'm up to almost 20,000 downloads on it, and I'm like, holy cow! Like I would have never guessed that would have happened, but it has. So it's been a really, really cool experience seeing other people get value out of what I've built.
Yeah. So all right, so we might as well, since we're on this subject, let's talk about streaming and OBS plugins.
Yeah.
And when did you start?
Absolutely.
When did you start streaming, and what made you decide to start streaming?
Yeah, so I was one of the classic, you know, COVID time. I got nothing else to do, so I might as well stream kind of people. I mean, it was a little more complicated than that. The real start of it was my oldest son at the time was getting really into Fortnite, and he was starting to watch Fortnite streamers. And I had no idea. Like, I'd heard of Twitch. I hadn't really looked at it pretty much at all. I'd heard that it could be toxic in some of the gaming stuff, and so I was like, well, I better just watch some of these streamers and see what my I guess you would have been like 11 at the time, 11-year-old kid is watching, you know, to make sure it's okay. And so I'm watching some of these streamers, and it was fun, you know, watching some of these gaming streamers. There were streamers streaming Fortnite that I liked a lot better than others. There were certain streamers streaming Fortnite that I was like, hey, don't be watching this streamer. That's you're a little too young for that, you know. But one day I went in and I saw this science and technology category. And I was like, huh, that sounds interesting. Maybe there are some like nerds here on Twitch. I realized later that like everyone on Twitch is a nerd, but you know, the right kind of nerd.
That's another story.
The right kind of nerd. So I went ahead and I, you know, clicked into the science and tech category. And at the time it was like a bunch of chickens and earthquakes, which I was one of those watching the earthquake thing because I had all that background in earthquake engineering, but I watched it for about 2 minutes and was like, oh, they're not talking about earthquakes. It's just this weird 3D. I think you've probably seen that in the category. It's like a weird 3D thing of the world just turning where earthquakes are happening. And then I scrolled a little more and I'm like, oh, wow, here's someone coding. Mm-hmm. Who in their right mind would ever watch this? I mean, I code all day anyways. Why would I want to watch it? And then I clicked on one, and it was a guy who had no hair. He had a beard. And he was building software, and his name was Bald Bearded Builder. And watching his stream, it was an absolute blast. I had so much fun. It was like, chat was amazing. Like there were all these software devs in chat that were talking about software dev stuff, and BBB is a very knowledgeable and very good coder and showing his skills. And so I kind of got linked into that community. Oh, sorry, my watch is getting excited because I'm moving my arms a lot. So I got involved with his community on his Discord and started just chatting with people, and they were asking, you know, what do you program? And at the time I was doing the construction app, but I was also looking a bit at some of the finance stuff that I'd built, and they were like, you should stream this. It would be really interesting. And so one day I decided, okay, well, we'll just try it. We'll stream it. And because I'd kind of integrated myself in this community, the first day I streamed, I had like 6 or 7 people show up and chat and just chatting back and forth. So I never really experienced that whole empty chat without anyone that a lot of streamers have to like get over that hump where they're streaming to 0 or 1 silent person or whatever, which is a really tough position to be in. I was very fortunate. I didn't have to experience that because I had that community that just jumped right in, and I was hooked. I was hooked at that point. So that would have been, I think, October of 21.
Okay.
Was kind of when or maybe October of 20. Would have been October of 20 when I started.
3 years, yeah.
About 3 years.
Yeah.
Yep. And so it was great. And I found that one of the things I loved about grad school, the thing that I miss most about grad school is I love teaching. I love teaching people. And I found that in my stream, by describing what I was doing, I was in a sense teaching, and it became very obvious because people started then asking questions, and I would explain the algorithm I was writing or why I was doing something a certain way. And so it was the opportunity to connect with people during COVID, where it was all of the meetups and stuff that I was going to locally here, it all disappeared. And it was the opportunity to kind of flex those teaching muscles in my brain again, which I hadn't formally done in several years. And so that was a lot of fun, and I found it was very, very fulfilling. And then I found out about myself that I had no idea that I'm like addicted to perfect production stuff. So everything I put in my stream, I spend hours and days and weeks going over to make sure it's absolutely what I want to present. So I've kind of gotten this reputation for all the crazy stuff that happens on my stream, and so that's been an adventure too.
yeah. I mean, this stuff is super cool. I'm not gonna lie. I'm pretty jealous that you had like 6 or 7 people in chat the first time. It was. I don't think
it helped it a lot. I mean, I don't know if I would have been able to keep doing it I don't know if I would have been strong-willed enough because I was seeking connection with people. That's really why I started streaming. And if there's no one in chat, it wasn't going to be sort of fulfilling what I was looking for, is that connection. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I get it. I definitely, and if you're in chat and like streaming to 0 people, keep at it.
Keep at it. Absolutely. It's hard. There's actually a streamer I see in the list right now, JD Does Dev, who he's a wonderful streamer.
Yep. I know
and
JD.
He streamed to like 1 or 2 people for like the first couple months, and now he's pulling anywhere from 10 to 40 depending on the stream, and he's just loving it. So just keep at it. If your people will find you. And the other thing I would say, if you're interested in streaming, now you got me on a soapbox. The other thing I would say
that wasn't my intention.
Be authentic. I mean, the last thing you want to do is try to be someone else, because if you attract a bunch of people being someone else, they're not coming for you, and you have to keep up the face of someone else. Just be yourself, and your people will find you. So
yeah, 100%. I agree with that. It's as Dr. Nerd is fond of saying, there's a lid for every pot, and you will find. You might think what you're streaming is not going to be interesting to people, but there's people. I mean, there's so many people on this platform.
Yep.
Nutty, welcome in, Nutty.
How you doing?
I think I've just managed to pull my earplug apart here. Great. And then how did you get? So I know that you said that for the OBS plugins, it was a thing where you're like, oh, I need these plugins. I'm gonna do this. Is that? And then you just streamed it, and then you put them on GitHub, and now you said you have 20,000 downloads on the one.
Yeah. So it kind of started. I got about a year ago. Maybe it was more than a year ago. Man, the time just flies. It was probably more like a year and a half ago. I got very deep into doing shaders for my stream, because there were a lot of like weird effects I wanted to do on my stream that just nothing existed for it. And I was like, well, I code, so how hard could it be? well, spoiler alert, it actually turned out to be pretty hard. It took me quite a while to learn how to write shader code, but it was a lot of fun, and it was an adventure. And I had a few people in my chat who knew some shader code that were kind of helping me along, and so it was just this great like community thing that was going on. And one day when I was working on shader code, I don't remember exactly how it happened, but a person named Exceldro showed up. And for those of you who are familiar with OBS plugins, you've likely heard the name Exceldro because he is like the plugin god. He has made... He's basically changed the game when it comes to streaming with like his Move plugin and the many other amazing plugins he's provided to the community. And he just showed up in my stream when I was working on some of these shaders, and just off the cuff, I said, would you like to come on the stream and just chat? I'm a huge fan of what you do. We talk about dev stuff here. I'd love to hear about your journey into writing plugins. And much to my surprise, he was like, yeah, totally. Just send me, whispered me and said, let's set up a time. And so he came on my stream and we had this wonderful, wonderful chat like we're having here today. And he kind of inspired me. He was like, well, you've built all these shaders. You can wrap those in plugins and make them accessible to more people. And I realized like especially some of the blur stuff I was doing, I was having to do all these crazy workarounds. This effect right here, and I'm using my old OBS for this, so this is the old version of this. When I blur my face cam and sharpen up the back, this takes 6 nested scenes to do properly. It's like it's duct tape and bubblegum the whole way down. And so I was like, well, if I'm going to write a plugin, I'm going to start with blur, and I'm going to wrap all of this crazy extra stuff I have to do into the blur plugin so that I'm able to just use one filter on my foreground and one on my background, and it'll do all the thing. And so that was kind of the inspiration to do it. And like I said, I just got hooked. I put it up on my GitHub. The first person to start making... Oh, hold on here. I got it. Give me 1 second,
yeah, no
Chad.
worries.
I just got to go tell my youngest he's got to go out to the bus. I'll be right back.
Guys, welcome in. If you just joined chat, sorry, I know I haven't been shouting people out when they've been coming in, but you're all very welcome. We're having a chat. I'm trying not to interrupt Finite while he drops his wisdom on us. If you have questions for Finite, drop them in chat. We'll try and get to them. But good morning, everybody. Welcome in. I hope you are having a great Thursday or Friday, depending on where you're from.
Okay, there we go. I'm back. So let's see. Where was I? So Exceldro was one of the first ones to then start chipping in on the blur plugin. And I was going back and forth, like conversations with him about like, okay, is it ready for release? I don't know. There might be bugs. Finally, Exceldro was like, just release the darn thing. Just put it. It was already on my GitHub. I had, a few hundred people had downloaded it at this point, and he was like, just submit it to the OBS forums and get it up there. And so I said, okay, I'm going to put on my big boy pants and do this. And the rest is kind of history. I released that, and some of the, as I call them, meta streamers, Nutty, that would be you, who stream about streaming, right? Kind of picked up on the blur plugin and really seemed to enjoy it, and made some amazing videos that they released about it. And and then I did the stroke and outline and glow plugin. And now we're working on an advanced mask plugin, and there's a lot of interest in it. And what's crazy about the whole thing. Someone asked me, so there's another plugin builder who made something called Stream Effects, and there's a whole drama that I won't get into around Stream Effects and what happened with it. But he had written a very, very good blur plugin. And my blur plugin ended up being significantly faster calculation than his. And people were asking, well, how do you come, never having written a blur plugin before, and able to write such a fast blur plugin? And the answer goes back to earthquakes. Yeah. It actually all goes back to earthquakes. When we were developing these random seismograms for earthquakes, it was all signal processing. We would actually Gaussian blur the data to smooth out some of the peaks and valleys in these seismograms. And so I had so much experience in signal processing, and all these Blur plugins is a bunch of signal processing.
It's
And so
funny.
I was able
Yeah.
to
I
I was able to
noticed when
fall
I was
back on this
watching you
stuff.
do it, I'm like, oh, I used to do this with astronomical images. This is just convolution and deconvolution, and
Yep,
this
exactly,
is the same stuff. It's so
exactly.
cool.
And so it's a lot of stuff that I learned, and back when I was doing this, I was doing it for these supercomputers with thousands of nodes, which that's now in your GPU. I mean, it's a little bit different, but it's sort of the same ideas of how do you do this parallelization and write efficient algorithms that take advantage of these many processors. So it kind of, my PhD, I've never used anything. Well, I've used some of the risk stuff when I was doing financial things, but I've used very little of my PhD in my life until I had to write a Blur plugin. And then I wrote what's turned out to be a pretty good Blur plugin. So
yeah, it's so cool. And I know a few people in the community use it, in my community use it.
Yep.
I'm going to be using it as well. I'm going to grab it in here. I'm going to man up. I just, I always break my stream when I try and do this stuff, and it's just like, and I always try and do it 5 minutes before I go live, right? This is never a good idea, and I'm thinking to myself as I'm doing it, this is a really bad idea, but I do it anyway.
Yeah.
It's kind of like you were saying the other day about the BIOS update. It's like, I really shouldn't do this, but
that was for my oldest son's computer. His computer's having all these problems, and I had to update the BIOS on it, and it's like, if that thing fails during update, you'd bricked the motherboard, right?
Yep.
So it's like taking forever, this little meter going up, and it would freeze every like 10 seconds and then start going up. It's like, but it worked. It fixed all the problems too, so that was good.
That's good. Yeah, I have actually bricked motherboards before, and I have the little thing that connects to the BIOS chip where you can actually like reprogram it using a laptop.
Yep.
Anyway, I don't want to get into that.
Yep.
The satisfaction of recovering that is pretty high, but the amount of hours.
Oh yeah, you would rather recover it yourself and have that satisfaction and spend 3 times what it would cost for a new motherboard than just go get a new motherboard. I'm one of those at least.
Exactly. No, 100%. 100%. So if you could look back, so from your streaming journey, so let's get a little bit into like what advice would you give yourself from the beginning to what would you do differently, I guess, or better?
So the first big thing I would do differently, and if any of my like OG viewers are here, they're gonna giggle a little bit at this, is I would have checked my backup system.
Yeah, I remember this.
Back about a year ago, I lost everything, and I thought everything was being backed up, but I never actually like tried to check to make sure it was, and it wasn't. But mostly it would be not to sweat anything. Like, things have happened on my stream where I would get upset or growth would stall out, and as much as I tell myself I don't care about the viewer number or the growth, like it is always in every streamer's mind. It's impossible to completely get rid of that, but just not to worry about it. Because it's not worth worrying about, and like I said, your people will find you, and when your people find you, you end up with an amazing community that supports you, that is there with you, and that's what it's all about, right? That's what it's all about. And so to not sweat those kinds of like bumps in the road, and to just fully embrace when bigger things happen. It was probably a year and a half ago that I had my first big raid from the Primogen, like 1,000 people jumping in on the stream.
Yeah.
And I look back on it, and like I was like a deer in the headlights. I was just like, because it was just this absolute huge shock. And it's funny, I had 2 weeks ago, the day I had to go in for my appendix, I had another Primogen raid with another 1,000 people. Now, I'm not saying the Primogen is the one who caused my appendix to peace out, but at the same time, I can't disprove it. So take that as you will. But yeah, a big raid, and this time, because I'd been through that a couple times, it was just fun. It was just fun, and I have a game we play on the chalkboard behind me called Chalk Boom.
Yeah.
And we fired up Chalk Boom, and normally we have like 15 people playing Chalk Boom. Well, we had well over 100, and it was just absolute chaos and pandemonium, and it was an absolute blast. And so, you know, just going with it, going with it. So, and realizing that like your viewers are there because they want to watch you. They're not judging you. You know, we're all gonna say stupid stuff on stream. It's just a part of being human. We're gonna say dumb things. We're gonna do dumb things, and you're not getting judged by your community. And if anyone in your community is judging you based on that, well, so what? You know, they can go take a long walk off a short pier for all I care. You know, so just being yourself, having fun, embracing even when things don't go the way you thought they were going to go. It's all a big adventure. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think just going back to what you were saying about the big raids as well, I think it can be easy to watch those. Not that you see the viewers just disappear, right? But I think what you have to remember is that those people, it's not your audience, right? It's somebody else's audience. And even if you only keep 10% of the people that came in, you know, then I think that's a huge win. Even if you just keep one person that came in, that's one new viewer that you have.
Absolutely. And I've been noticing that a lot more lately, that I've been getting raids and I've had, you know, 1 to 5 new people that immediately engaged and stuck around the rest of the stream and came back the next stream. So it's been really nice to see that, because it can get a little bit demoralizing when you go back and you look at your stream thing and you see the big peak and then you see it just drop off, or it's like, I guess you know, but like you said, that's not your audience. And you know, but if you find a few people from that audience that enjoy what you're putting out, then great. And if not, you know, I always tell people when they come in on a raid, I'm like, this is what we're doing, and if this is something you're interested in, stick around. We'll have a lot of fun. If it's not something you're interested in, I get it. There's a lot of other streamers to go watch, or you know, whatever you want to do. So you can't take it personally.
Yeah, for sure. That's good advice. All right, so let's just kind of wrap up. What are your plans for the next year for like streaming and for the OBS plugins? Do you have other plugins in mind, or are you going to take it in a different direction?
I think my stream will stay similar. I'd like to add more to it. We had all these clones that all got lost in the great data loss. Well, the clones didn't. The portals. It's complicated. There's like a whole portal thing and a connection, and the data for the connection was lost. So my clones are like out in some other universe that I need to reestablish connection. We're gonna do that over the next few months here and get the clones back. I've got a few like top secret projects which I'm really excited about that I'm not going to mention what they are. They just, if they're things that if I can pull them off, they're going to be really, really fun. There's a few of those that I've had that I haven't been able to pull off, that no one has ever seen. They haven't seen the light of day, but I've got 2 right now that I'm excited about. The plugins, you are the first to hear it. Version 1.0 of the Advanced Mask plugin is up on GitHub. Today on my stream, we're going to work on documenting it and shooting some video to like demonstrate what it can do and how to use it, so that I can get it submitted to the OBS forums. Once that plugin is out, there's going to be a little bit of cleanup on the other 2 plugins, and then we're going to jump into a noise generation plugin. So my overall goal with the plugins is I want to make OBS as close to a real-time Adobe After Effects as possible. And so many... basically the 2 starting components of almost every effect in After Effects is masking, which we now have the masking plugin that does like 95% of the type of masking you'd ever want to do, and noise generation, and you use that noise for like displacement maps and all sorts of other stuff. So the next step is to write a really robust noise generation plugin, which once again, signal processing for the win. I think this one will be mathematically heavy, but stuff that I'm good at, so I'm excited for that. And then I've actually toying around with some partnerships with some people that do OBS stuff, which will hopefully get announced here soon. And then I'm really looking, after conversations with like Exceldro and some other folks in the sort of plugin OBS streaming community, I'm really looking to figure out a way that we can get some real company involvement in terms of like supporting and sponsoring plugin development. You know, you look at, you know, certain companies, and I'm not going to name any names right here, but there's certain companies that provide software or hardware for streamers, and much of what they do is enabling streamers to use these amazing plugins that, you know, that all these plugin authors have made. Well, if the plugins aren't there, those companies they're gonna lose a lot of their value in terms of the products that they're selling. And so figuring out a way that as a plugin author, I could actually potentially pay the bills developing plugins.
Yeah.
You know, because you make it my full-time job, and I'll just tell you, we're gonna have a lot of plugins for OBS because I got a lot of ideas. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I got to put food on the table. So figuring out a way to partner with various, you know, other parties that are benefiting financially from the streaming and stream production ecosystem, I think could be a benefit to everyone. So I'm trying to figure out the right people to talk to. I think I've figured out some of the right people to talk to, but finding even more to figure out a way that we can make this a reality. So that's one of my goals for 2024 is to, you know, I'm at an inflection point with my career right now, and I'm really loving what I'm doing. And one of the things that my dad always instilled in me was, you find something you love to do and you hold on to that and you figure out a way to make that work, you know, and that's how you're going to be happy with what you're doing professionally and personally. And so I want to give it a shot and try to figure out a way to make that work.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, look, man, I know that you're making big bucks from the plugins because you're charging the very high price of free for the plugins. But I mean, we certainly all appreciate all the work that you put into the plugins, and it's great to be able to watch you developing them on stream and stuff as well. And
absolutely,
I mean, your community is awesome, and I'm 100% sure that you will find a way to get this done.
I think so. I spoke to some folks at TwitchCon. That was a great place to connect with some people, and you know, they seemed open to having conversations, and that's the first step, right? You know, you got to start by talking and having a conversation, and you know, it may go nowhere or it may end up being the dream, but you don't know until you try.
Yeah, absolutely. And I enjoyed meeting with you at TwitchCon, and I like you, as you said. I mean, there's a ton of great people in the community and in the bigger Twitch community, all across gaming and software development, and the science people that stream, like, you know, it's kind of my area. And there's so much cross-pollination that can happen. There's so many cool projects, and like you said, you just have to talk to people, and that's kind of what Twitch is all about, right? So it's making connections.
Absolutely.
So it's super cool. So if anyone has a question for Finite, pop it in the chat. Yeah. We'll spend a few minutes doing some Q&A if you want to do it that way.
Absolutely.
Also, so Finite, we always end these things. You get to choose who we rate out to. So
okay.
So if you want to be thinking about that while if people have questions, they put them in chat. Then because I have to go to work as well here in a little while. So we're going to be once we finish up, we'll do some housekeeping, and then we'll rate out to whoever you think is the raid target of the day. It could be in any.
I've already picked them out.
Okay.
So.
All right. Good. Yeah, I mean, I'm a little intimidated to ski with you, given your background, but it would be
Oh
fun if
no,
we can
it's so,
make it happen.
so here's the thing about skiing. So Mrs. Singularity had never skied in her life up until about 5 years ago, and she loves to ski, to get outside, to just get on the mountain and take it easy. I have as much fun skiing the greens and the blues with her, just enjoying the outdoors in the mountains, as I do going up and doing all the crazy stuff I do, in the gnarly terrain. I just have a love of being on skis and being out in it. So I will adapt to, if you ever want to go skiing, whatever level you're at, it will be a blast. So
Oh, for sure. It's always fun, yeah, and I enjoy it because I mean, Mini Nerd is what, 10 now, and she's been skiing since she was, geez, 5 maybe. And she's to the
okay.
point now where she can ski the blacks with me. I mean, she's not going to ski like the bowls and stuff, but she can ski
Yep.
a
Yep.
decent black, and it's so much fun just to go hang out and sit on the
It
lift
is.
together and just kind of laugh and freezing. I remember the last time we went, it was pretty much a. I don't know, Dr. Ned, she kind of knows the story. It was pretty much a whiteout at the top of the mountain, and we were skiing. We were having so much fun, and we were freezing. We couldn't see. There was kind of a cliff on one side, and there were flags
Yep.
and ropes and stuff, but it was a bit sketchy. But
Yep.
and we get to the bottom. I'm like, all right, we should. It was like the leaving day, so we ski until like lunchtime, and then we make the drive home. And
Got it.
she's like, I'm like, oh, we should probably go. It's kind of sketchy. And she's like, no, one more. And I was like, okay. it was so
It's
cool.
it's a lot of fun. I ended up taking. I'll tell one skiing story quick. We were at Big Sky 2 years ago, and my 12-year-old at the time was finally ready to ride the tram up to the top of the mountain, and it's all double blacks and really, there's easier, really hard stuff up there, and then really hard stuff up there. So we took him over to the easier, really hard stuff, and he did fine, and he wanted to try this other run called Marks, which is essentially it's like a 1,500 foot vertical at about 45-degree pitch, just like you're like skiing down like the face of the mountain for like 1,500 vertical feet. Well, to get there, you take this cat track and you go around this corner, and there's about a 2,000 foot drop off, and it's big enough that you're not going to go over. But when you make that corner, to this day, it takes my breath away. It's like, whoa, this is real, right? And so I'd put a GoPro on my 12-year-old, and he was in front of me going, and we eventually get to the run, and we do the run, and we get down to the bottom, and when we got down to the very bottom of the mountain, Mrs. Singularity was like, "Oh, I gotta watch the GoPro footage," and my son was like, "No, you can't watch it," and I'm like, "No, come on, Mom can watch it," and he leans over to me, he's like, "Dad, I may have said a bad word," and I was like, Mom's not gonna care. So finally, we convince him, and we're sitting there in the lot, in our room, and we're watching it on the TV. And he's going around that corner, and he drops an F-bomb as clear as day. And I look over at him, and he turns red, and my wife starts laughing, and she turns to him and she says, "If there's ever a time to say that word, that was effing it." So he was so worried that it was gonna get him in trouble. But I see one question, and it's actually a great question. Astronomy show is asking how I got my name. And the science people in chat will probably understand that it's a bit of a oxymoron, finite singularity, because singularities are not supposed to be finite. It actually goes back to grad school when I was working on the carbon capture and storage simulation stuff, and it was actually it was Total View, the debugger, that figured out the solution to this. We were running these simulations, and every once in a while, seemingly random, we would have a collapse of, basically a seg fault that appeared to be a divide by zero issue. And we're monitoring all these values of porosity and everything, which you would divide by, and nothing was zero. Everything was finite. And this went on for like a month. We're trying to chase down this bug, and would happen really sporadically. And so it got referred to as the finite singularity bug. and it turned out that it was a node numbering issue, that one of the nodes in the cluster, and this is why in a cluster at the time the rule was, in an open MPI cluster, you're never supposed to number your nodes from 0. You're always supposed to number them from 1.
Yeah.
Specifically for if you're doing some sort of ID conversion, you can't divide by 0. Well, they numbered one of the nodes by 0, so when we would get allocated our nodes, if we got the 0 node in our list, the simulation would crash.
Oh, no.
But the next time you'd run it, it wouldn't crash.
Be fine.
So,
oh my god.
And so every time we would have a bug in the code from that point forward, people would ask, is it another finite singularity? And so then when I was putting together my Twitch stream, I was like, you know, that's a good name. That's a good name. We'll go with it.
Very good. That's a great name. Yeah, it's very cool.
It's long. It's long. People see it. They're like, so.
Well, I mean, most people just call you finite, I think, right? Once
they do. They do.
Or my Mark is nice and short, too.
Yes. Yeah, Mark works well, too. So.
Listen, Mark, finite singularity, thank you so much for coming on. I don't think, if there's no more questions from chat, we'll wrap things up. We'll let Finite go about his day. I need to get off to work as well. I really appreciate you coming on. It's been great to chat with you and learn more about it.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And guys, go follow Finite. Can we get a shout out for Finite? Another shout out. And go follow Finite. You can watch all the OBS plugins being developed, and you can meet all the clones, or some of the clones who are some of the clones. So the ones where the portals have been reinstated.
Yes, the water clone specifically is back. So.
One Up Cat said, are you streaming later, Finite?
Yes, I am. I'll be streaming probably at around 10 o'clock. So in about 40 minutes, I'll fire it up and we'll work on like I said, the documentation and shooting a little bit of video, figuring out some examples for the new plugin, because 1.0 is ready to go, which I'm really excited about.
That's exciting. So. Yeah, well, congrats on that as well. You need to have a celebration today.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, so Finite, final question for you. Who are we rating?
Yes. We are rating JD Does Dev.
Nice. Can you spell that for me? I don't have it up right now.
There, I just popped it in chat.
Okay, perfect. I will copy that.
So JD is fantastic. Really, really fun streamer. He's working on a stream game in Go. He's a part of my stream team. Well, not the stream team that I'm a part of, which is White Panther or Selma's stream team, The Claw. And yeah, great guy. And I think y'all really enjoy him.
Awesome. All right, fine. I'll let you go. I'm going to do a little quick bit of housekeeping here at the end of the stream, and we'll rate out to JD Does Dev. But hey, thanks again, buddy. And we'll see you around.
Thank you. Have a good one.
All right, thanks. Take care.
Bye-bye.